And then once you are released from jail, all that's out the window. It just is. Get to know who you are, and so that you can be the best possible you, because nobody can be you but you. Hey. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when it's time to make a change. So I always tell people it's like walking into the ocean, right? All the way until your head is under the water. What do you want more than anything else in life at that moment?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Chats. We have the wonderful Stevie Mack. He is a comedian who's performed on Showtime, HBO, has an amazing one-person show, has books published. But we're going to get into a chat with him where we discuss how he came from a family riddled with crime, addiction, gangster ethics, born in Los Angeles, and overcame these adversities and sobered up and changed his life.
Through laughter and humor.
So we'll get to our first question.
Yes.
How would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never had one?
Well, have they had other fruit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they've had other foods?
Yes.
They just haven't had a banana.
Correct.
Oh, well, I would say a banana would be like a peach, but it's more like a hot dog shape. And the taste is semi-sweet.
Do you like bananas?
I love bananas, but I don't eat a lot of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't want to have too much carbs and potassium. So just enough. Just enough
to keep you going. So when did you have your first existential life crisis as a child?
Oh, see, as a child, I was 11. I was sitting on a swing set, and I thought to myself, and I said it out loud too. There was another kid on the swings. He was 17 years old, and I was 11. And I just had this epiphany, and I said, you know what? I don't ever want to get any older. I want to stay 11 for the rest of my life, because I just felt at that moment in time, I was at peace with myself and with the world. And I just wanted to be that kid. So that kid still lives in me. And I that's where I go when I meditate, to get in touch with that kid, because that's a safe place.
So you had a Peter Pan syndrome?
No? Peter Pan syndrome. Nah, he had something else going on.
But he didn't want to grow up.
Well, no, not that I didn't want to grow up. I just wanted to stay where I was at. Peter Pan wore tights and flew around, didn't he? Wore a green hat.
That's just the outsides. Maybe that's why I'm wearing green today. Right. Who knows? Who knows? But it was a feeling of being calm.
Yeah.
And did that dissipate? You noticed that it started to change.
Of course, over time, that changed when I turned 12. From 11 to 12, all that changed. Then I wanted to be older. That's when I started lying about my age. At 12, I told people I was 16. So
did you look like you could be past the 16?
Well, that's one thing about me, is that I'm timeless. It's like I'm kind of, no matter what age I am, you think I'm something else. So in my eyes, I passed for 16 because, the maturity level that I carry. I mean, I see kids today and I question how old they are, because they have an old soul and they talk like an older person and everything. Like, wait a minute, is that a kid or a little person? You don't know.
Yes, it's adorable seeing it on young children, isn't it?
And scary. Like, wow, that's a future congressman or something.
Something. Right. And so there is a philosophical view that the prodigy kids are coming in before, because they got all that information in previous lifetime, and they're coming back now to sort it out.
Yeah.
Right. So an old soul is really someone who kept getting it wrong.
That's a point of view. Yeah, that's a perspective on it. Yeah.
So why 12? I mean, was there pressure around you socially to act older?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I lived in a rough environment. Grew up on the east side of Los Angeles. So there was gangs all around, crime, and bad actors. You know, the Crips and Bloods were just being formed prominently in Los Angeles at that time. And so there was a lot to deal with and to combat against. And you know, at 12, at that time, you're coming into formulating who you're going to be. What person are you going to be? And you know, watching television, I always tell people this. I was raised by the TV and movies, and I'm influenced by those characters that I see on the screen. So that had a big part to play in it, what I want to be and who I want to become. Environment and hereditary. So those two things played a part.
Were you one of many boys in your family unit?
Yeah. So, you know, my mother had 3 girls and 3 boys. We were like the Brady Bunch if they all were crazy.
And where were you in the birth line chronologically?
Middle child. I was the third of the 6.
So you felt that you were a child of woe and forgotten?
No, not at all. Well, there's a whole story to that. You know, my one-man show talks about the difference that I felt from my other siblings because their dad stuck around and mine didn't. So yeah, I felt forgotten in that sense. And then I lashed out on the world to take what I wanted because no one was there to give it to me. And so, yeah, I talk about that in my one-man show.
Was there a pivotal moment that you remember thinking that and then you made the decision?
Nah, it kind of all happened. Evolved over a period of time.
And that was at 12.
Yeah, between 12 and 13, a lot of growing happened right there.
So there was no event that occurred in that beginning 12th year or end of that 11th year that had you make these decisions?
There was a number of events that occurred. Everything that surrounded me, my whole family. Yeah. My mother went to the mental institution during that time. There was a lot of shootings going on in the neighborhood. So there's a lot of trauma. You know, trauma, a lot of people don't understand that trauma happens when good things happen and bad things. Some people think trauma is only when something bad happens. There was a lot of trauma going on at that time, good and bad.
So that's a quite pivotal moment for your birth mother to go to a mental institution. Was she there for a long period of time?
You know, I don't remember. It was a lot happening. I stayed with my grandmother off and on. I didn't spend a lot of time at home. I was a bad kid. You know, I ran the streets. I stole stuff. I went to juvenile hall and camps. I spent a lot of time in camps and juvenile hall as a youth. So yeah, that happened around that time too. First time ever going to jail, right? A lot of trauma, a lot of new stuff being introduced into my life that made me grow up fast.
And was there a moment when you realized that this solution that you had come up with, right, of this behavior wasn't working for you anymore?
That took a long time. So since this is called awareness meditation, I want to just say when I went to camp, I went to juvenile hall at 11 first. And then at 12, I went to camp. And camp, I spent like a year. This probation camp, right? Camp Munns. And it was there that I was introduced to meditation from a counselor there named, I forget what his name was. But he taught us Aikido, you know, martial arts and meditation. And so when I learned to meditate there, a lot of things changed for me then. And did a lot of reading, had a lot of opportunities to read and to write and become creative. Stuff that I wasn't doing on the streets, because on the streets it was just ripping and running, right? So yeah, slowly but surely, my life evolved over a period of time. It took all the way up until I was 27 before I really shifted gears in the right direction, like for good, but not for good. If you understand what I'm saying, it's always going to be some impedance along the way. So yeah, like I said, my one-man show, Diary of a Crackhead, is where I talk about all these things from the time I was born until now. so there's solutions along the way in life, but there's also problems along the way. And for every problem, there is a solution, but one has to find that solution in the problem. It's sort of like solving a riddle.
So you had the meditation instruction when you were 11, 12. Is that correct?
Well, when I was 12.
When you were 12.
Yeah.
And were you doing it regularly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I practice regularly, yeah.
So you're practicing it regularly, but still there was a payoff living that lifestyle.
Oh, of course. I mean, when I was practicing it regularly is when I was in jail. Once I got out, I wasn't practicing meditation. I'm going to drink some water.
Right. So you were doing it while you were in jail. And how long were you there?
I was there for a year.
For a whole year, right?
Yeah.
So that made a difference. And when you came out, did you stop practicing because it wouldn't fit the life you needed to fit in outside of jail?
Not really. It's just like anything that you start doing in jail. You start on a road of good behavior. And then once you are released from jail, all that's out the window. You know, not because you intentionally threw it out the window. It just is. Like, for instance, I was just looking at a video the other day. Some guy got robbed in some neighborhood in New York from his chain, his shoes, and his watch and all that. But it was like really late at night, and he's walking around that neighborhood. You know, in the hood, the common sense tell you don't come out with all your jewelry on. You know, $15,000 worth of jewelry at night without a bodyguard or a posse, right? So same thing, like you say, when I got out of jail, it's like a certain lifestyle didn't dictate me closing my eyes and not looking around and getting quiet. You know what I'm saying? The environment didn't dictate it.
So there wasn't a quite fully a character shift that occurred when you were in jail. So do you feel that it really didn't help rehabilitate you?
Well, everything that's happened in my life has helped. It's all an accumulation. You know, you are the sum result of your experiences, your total life. So everything.
But when you were 11 specifically.
Well, say that again.
So when you were specifically 11, right? Not now, at that time, that the time in jail didn't actually bring about a character change for you. It had some habits and some tools, but it wasn't enough to bring about a deeper inward shift within your soul to change the behavior when you got out.
Nothing really did that until recently, 15 years ago.
Okay. And what was that shift?
Well, that shift was me getting clean and sober.
So what was the moment before that happened? What was the turning point where the soul said, enough?
Well, desperation. Yeah, the gift of desperation, desperate to want to live versus allowing yourself to die. So I always tell people it's like walking into the ocean, right? All the way until your head is under the water. What do you want more than anything else in life at that moment? It's to breathe. So whatever you can do to get back to breathing, that's where I was at 15 years ago.
So that sounds like from 11 that there were probably multiple scenarios that occurred that could have been nudging you to change your life or sober up. What was that particular incident that you think helped you stay on your track that you're on now?
Well, that it's I'll tell it to you like this. Over a period of time, one will seek to get help in life. And it's not until there's a saying, you can't see until you see, and you can't hear until you hear. It's really inexplicable, the metamorphosis that occurred, but I can tell you why it occurred. It occurred because I was desperate enough to want it to happen. Before that, I just desired to be sober so that I can get my life back on track and get my money and get clean and nice clothes and stuff. But at that time, 15 years ago, I wanted to live and not die. So that was the the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will.
That was the impetus. So rather than
Yes.
outside third dimensional desires, and probably very, very strong for you, it wasn't until deep down inside, it was a desperation of simply wanting to live differently.
And not just wanting, but needing to. Yeah, needing to.
So there was a shift in your consciousness with your connection that kept you going. And so how long would you say you had been traveling the path of wanting to have this different, clean life and yet not being able to sustain it before you were able to?
Well, I was from the age of 27, until 47. So maybe 20 years.
That's a long period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what would you say to anyone who may be listening or relating to your story, if there was an element of wisdom you would want to pass on to them to accelerate the process?
And see that therein lies the impetus of it all. It's like, I can't give anybody the gift of desperation. They have to earn that. And it's like, I bumped my head against that wall so many times until I didn't want to bump it against that wall anymore. So when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when it's time to make a change and to a whole change. And here's the difference. The first couple of times that I attempted at sobriety and getting my life on track, I hadn't made a whole change. I just changed not getting high anymore, but I hadn't dealt with undealt with issues such as low self-esteem, insecurity, stuff that I've done to people, stuff that people have done to me, perceptions of people and stuff like that. None of that stuff had been dealt with. Those are undealt with issues. So, and we know that anything you go through that's traumatic, you stuff it down and stop growing emotionally. So from 11 to 12, right, the shift happened. So from 12 to 27, I was stuffing my emotions because now I'm living a life of a facade and I'm not growing, and I'm just stuffing all this stuff. So from 12 to 27, you have a 27-year-old who hasn't grown emotionally since he was 12. So you got a grown man, 27, with a 12-year-old emotional state. And it's undealt with because you just stopped getting high, but you haven't dealt with these issues. So from 27 to 47, nothing changed. You're still a 12-year-old, right? Emotionally. And so at 47 is when things changed. I think it was 47, 57. No, it may have been 42. Either way it goes, in the 40s, right? Once those emotional issues and that trauma is dealt with, you have to uncover, discover, and discard those things through a process. Then you can start growing again emotionally. Now, does that mean that from the 40s to the 50s, say 15 years, so for 15 years, am I now 15 years older than 12 emotionally, which would be now I'm 27 emotionally?
Now you're even.
Quite possible.
Now it's magic time.
Right.
So it was required to do some in-depth work to shift your consciousness. Your perception is now changed of events or feelings and emotions from traumatic experiences, which would then in turn reduce any triggers or movements to want to check out with substances. Yeah,
it was necessary, a necessary change, and to be connected to the universe in a whole different way. Before I wasn't connected. So, if there's a universal power and I'm not plugged into that source and that power, then I'm not getting my battery charged, my spiritual battery. So once I plugged into that power, you don't want to unplug from it. But at times the plug can get kicked out. And I'll tell you, those times is when somebody jump in front of you in traffic, or somebody flips you off, or somebody, I'll give you a prime example. I'm at Costco today. and I have a shopping cart and I got my phone. The lady asked me to walk around the counter. So I got all the stuff walking around the counter. And there's this guy walking towards me. Instead of him walking around me, I'm close to the counter. He wants to go on the side and me to move out of his way. And then he walks around and goes, "Excuse you." And so in my head, I'm like, he just said something that I don't agree with. And I can retort to that. And, or I can just keep going because he doesn't know science. Science dictates that a smaller body rotates around a larger body. That's just, we're smaller than the sun. We rotate around it. It has a gravitational pull. He was a smaller body. I had more stuff. He's supposed to rotate around me, but he didn't realize that. So I calm myself through that by saying that. But what made me even go there? It's a higher power that made me go there. What I'm plugged into now, plugged into a greater consciousness, because in and of myself grew up the gangster, right? Excuse you. Yeah, come here. Let me excuse you. All right. That's the old me, right? I even went outside the store to do a brief meditation on what happened after I left the store, or was I waiting for the guy to come out? Yeah, which one was it? Was I meditating or was I waiting on this guy to come out so I could confront him?
Either way, stepping out to get a breath of fresh air or polluted air in Los Angeles is an act of stepping away.
Get me some of that smog.
When you started to change your life, did you find you were required to move out of your original old neighborhood in order to stay on track?
I had already moved out of it. I've been gone from the old neighborhood, but it is good to be away from old people and old places because, like I said, it's environmental and hereditary. So your environment can dictate what type of person you become. Because you have to, you're in the jungle, the lion tamer don't have to live in the jungle with the lions. You go to the circus and tame them, bring them out of the jungle, right? So if you're in that type of environment, it's going to be harder if you're in an environment that's not conducive to growth, but that's pulling you in the opposite direction, or it's always around you. Yeah.
And when you would go back and spend time with your family, were people appreciative of the change, or did you find that there were factors trying to pull you back into that old?
When you say people, are you talking about people in the neighborhood?
Yeah, or your family unit.
Oh no, well no, they appreciate where I'm at, and in fact, a lot of them have changed their ways and are growing in a better direction. Yeah, I didn't know. We didn't have the type of you gotta see my one-man show. I moved a lot. Okay, I went to 11 different elementary schools, and so there's no set friends that I have in the neighborhood. I was there for a minute and long enough to steal something, and we moved to another neighborhood. So I don't have a history. It's not like we lived in a house all my life, and that's where I grew up as a child. No, it's like we moved all over the place. So I don't know anybody really.
Was this all over the place in the same neighborhood, though?
Nope. Sometimes just a few in the same neighborhood, but Pomona, Pasadena, South Central LA, Watts. I mean, we moved all over the place. So, yeah.
Right. But Pasadena is very different to Watts neighborhood.
Yeah. And so is Pomona. We moved in Pomona when they had just built Chancellor Village. And I guess that's the 60 freeway was just being finished out. So, yeah.
And how did you adapt? Did you find if it was so stark, you would always find your like-minded fellows, or would you sort of have a personality shift?
No, I was too young for all that. All I was doing at that time was ripping and running, hanging in the streets. And I was always the leader of the pack. So, yeah. The only different thing I encountered in Pomona was there was a bully at the school who I had to deal with, and I dealt with him. And then I became the bully slayer. So I looked for bullies, I like to meet up with bullies because I'll set them straight.
And did you find that was related to your size?
No, it's just, bully's gonna be a bully. They don't care. Well, bullies are normally bigger. you know, and this guy was bigger. So it had nothing to do with my size. No, you mean like a little man's complex or something?
No, I mean, just that you had mentioned earlier with the person at the counter that you were bigger. So
no. When I said bigger there, I meant I had a big old shopping cart full of stuff in one hand, and then it's me, and then it's my phone. That's a bigger mass of stuff than him just by himself walking. He could go around all this stuff. Well, you want me to pull all my stuff around you? No, you go around me. So that's what I meant by that. So yeah. Now with the bullies and stuff, they're normally bigger. And but like I said, I was influenced by a movie, so I thought I knew karate. And I made a pair of nunchucks. Wah! And I scared the bullies off. And yeah, so
what advice would you give to anyone who you can see is wanting to change their life but struggling with it?
Well, there's a couple of things to do. One is to write on paper about what you want to achieve, and to read positive motivation books. I read a lot of those, believe it or not, even when I lived in the hood as a youngster, like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. I read all those books. And one of the things that popped out of those is whatever the mind can achieve and whatever the mind can believe, the mind can achieve. Whatever the mind can believe, you can achieve, right? So conceive, that's the word. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. That was the quote from that book. And that thoughts are things, and they become a physical reality once they're put into physical action. And so if a person wants to come out of it, they got to start writing and journaling and getting out of themselves what they're feeling, and also talking to someone, whether it's a therapist or a, doesn't matter, preacher, pastor, therapist, a confidant, someone who you can intimate to. It's important to get it out of you. And I used to teach this class on goal charting. What a goal chart is a vertical. It's a vertical map to where you want to go, and things you need to achieve along the way with dates attached to it. And they have to be achievable, not nothing unrealistic. They have to be realistic. Where you're at, where you want to be, what you have to do to get there. Boom. I got one sitting up there right now, a goal chart that I did. I used to teach this class over at Beit Shuvah, and then a lot of my friends. It's amazing how it works. I tell you, this also vision boards. You know, vision boards, right? To put what you want on the board. This really works. But not only this is here's the way this really works. I'll give you an example of how I did this one time. I needed a printer, and this was back in 1998. I needed a printer, and I knew exactly what kind of printer. So I cut it out of the newspaper, a picture of the printer. I taped it to the paper, and I wrote next to it how much it cost. I dug in my pocket. I had $7 or something, and I put it in this box, and I put the money in the box with it. I kid you not. The very next night at a show, I was doing a show in Leimert Park, Stevie Mack's One Acts. A producer, a friend of mine, we were talking, and I don't know how it came. I brought up the printer, and she goes, "Oh my God, I have that exact printer, and it has a label stuck on the roller. You want it? I'll give it to you for blah, 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 blah." It was like 10% of what the printer actually cost. The exact same printer, but I had made this physical action toward getting it and committed myself to it physically and monetarily. And it happened overnight. I mean, that kind of stuff, that's what I'm talking about. That's the magic.
Yes. Well, it's often also the receiver, being yourself, is open to the message of where your desire truly is. And when the desire matches alignment with the soul or a soul's purpose, it happens like that. Right. Ooh. And so we are often subject to these cultural, social ideals that aren't necessarily true for our own vibration of who we are. And as one gets older, which is usually wiser, the idea of being that person, doing what that person does, starts to melt away, and one comes more into their own true, authentic spirit. Right. And that's when things start to flow a little bit more. You're able to look in the description we'll put in, because I host creative visualization workshops, which go from getting down to that quiet place, moving upwards, not necessarily working on a third dimensional goal setting project management, which is super popular, but I've twisted on the head to go look at what the soul, and we all know we just have to get quiet enough to be able to listen, right? That's the secret, being able to listen. Right. And what do you do on a daily basis to help yourself be able to listen to that inner voice or universe consciousness?
Prayer. I pray. Quiet moment. Yeah. You can call it meditate, pray, meditate.
So meditate, it can be anything. It's sort of like going to the doctor and the doctor saying, I'd like you to, be more active. Okay, what, like walk around the block with a Starbucks or run a marathon? It's still being more active.
Well, I cycle.
Ultimately, it's about finding
I ride my bike at the beach on the ocean front. I ride about 6 miles, typically about 6 mile round trip. And I meditate then when I'm riding my bike.
So it's an active meditation. There are two types of meditation, basically. There's conscious mind, right? You're doing something with your mind. You'd be sitting, contemplating, or you're being physically active. You're in the waking state doing something. And then there are non-directive practices. That's pretty much how it can be delineated out. And depending on where someone's at, one can help, is attracted to one or another. Some people doing something, the idea of sitting still, listening is too hard. And that's because the mind chatter is simply the mind attempting to release stress. And part of the nonprofit is to go into underrepresented groups and bring meditation that helps go down deep and teach that in the communities where it's no charge to them. Those of you who are curious about the meditation, we have a free ebook called Vedic Meditation Stories. And it's the only publication globally at this moment in time that has true stories from individuals who the meditation changed their life. Some of them even had brain injury, actually tried to commit suicide. People have come from a lot of trauma, and it's written in their own words and not edited. It was very important that their true voice be heard. And so you'll find the link for that down there. And if you have Amazon Prime right now, it's completely free. Yes. And if you have a moment to like and subscribe, we'd appreciate that. So with that, Stevie, what would be something you'd like to leave for the world after Stevie Mack is gone?
Well, I'm constantly putting that out there, which is my comedy. And I'm producing content on a daily basis. So there will be a legacy. I have a book, How to Be a Hollywood Comedian. I have another book, Diary of a Crackhead. And that's, the one-man show, Diary of a Crackhead, is 1 hour. The book goes into other details. Yeah, so that gets deep. That book ain't finished yet, because guess what? It's always evolving. It's my life. So when you order that book, I'll hurry up and write the ending for you. And you get a whole different ending from anybody. Each book is unique that way. How cool is that, right? The ending always evolves. But if there was a word or some words that I would like to leave to people, is get to know yourself. Get to know who you are. And so that you can be the best possible you, because nobody can be you but you. Hey, that's it.
And find out who that is. All right. Well, thank you so much, Stevie Mack, for joining us. The information is down in the description where you can find out about all his bumps. And we hope that you will like and subscribe and share the video if you've got something out of it, and reach out to us if you too have a community that might want to have us come and bring meditation. So with that, we hope we'll see you soon on the next Cosmic Chat.